Brent, Alabama was winding up a Memorial Day weekend of rest and relaxation. The twilight of a Sunday evening was disturbed only by very dark clouds and a certain amount of apprehension over weather bulletins brought into homes by radio and television. Those who did worry had good reason. In those dark clouds was a maxi tornado, and it vent its fury on Brent, Alabama. WAPI News presents And Life Goes On, the story of Brent, Alabama, and the devastation it suffered on May 27, 1973. Now, here's WAPI News Director Wendell Harris. A maxi tornado is described by the Weather Service as containing winds of 200 miles an hour. It had to be that to do what it did to Brent, Alabama. There is little or nothing left of this small town of some 2,000, and now it has 5 less citizens. They died because a tornado has no eyes and destroys life as it destroys buildings. It destroyed a lot of buildings in Brent. 92% of the main part of town was wiped out, including most of the businesses, City Hall, and Brent Baptist Church, a large building just a block from the main business district. There were a lot of people in that church. They were led to the basement by an interim pastor in an effort to find shelter from the storm. All but one made it. A flying brick was apparently the cause of the one death recorded at the church. There was confusion, but no panic.
I was supposed to lead the youth choir that night, and the lights went out, and they were all running in and out the door. Well, I mainly went out to get them in, to get this ready. And when I got outside, I heard it, and I stood there and listened a minute, thought possibly it was a train. Then I realized it wasn't. I just told them to get in the basement, and then went towards front. And as I was headed towards front, our visiting pastor came out and asked me if he wanted the people upstairs to go to the basement. I told him just as fast as they could.
Right on the 3rd floor of the Brent Baptist Church. We were just dismissing training union, getting ready for the worship service, and we heard the awful racket. The lights went out. We held hands and trying to make our way downstairs, but the wall collapsed on us. There was 3 of us, my wife with the head, myself, Ms. Daddle, and Ms. Kraut. 3 of us was injured. Ms. Daddle was injured seriously, which is still in the hospital. Good Lord bless me. I stayed 5 days in the hospital and doing mighty well at the time being. I thank God for it.
Of course, it hit. They had gone down to the basement, and we had just came out of our training class on the 2nd floor. And we heard the wind, and didn't really know what to do. And then all of a sudden, I heard the glass in the window break in my training class, and then we looked down at the other end of the hall, which is on the end we were in the opposite end from where the office was, and saw the ceiling come out. And I grabbed my wife. I grabbed the lady I thought was my wife because the lights went out, and we got around the corner between 2 walls. And luckily, that end of the ceiling didn't come down.
Well, we were gathering in the auditorium for preaching service, and the preacher come in and says, I hear a terrible roaring, we better go to the basement. And everybody rushed down to the basement, and while we were going, he says, lay on the floor. And we all fell down on the floor.
So it is a miracle that only 1 person was killed.
It's a miracle, and 3 or 4 were hurt. But, hello. But so far as I know, they're doing all right there in the hospital.
What happened to the one man who was killed?
Well, we don't know. We had to go down the steps into the basement, and we just supposed that he didn't get down the steps and maybe a brick or something hit him in the head.
Not all of those hurt were in church. Some were in cars spun off the road by the storm. Others were in their homes, and many others were in churches that sustained less damage. Carter Thompson was at home, and his home flew apart.
I was out feeding my puppies. Just got trouble. My wife called me and said, Carter, just come in the house. Says a storm coming. I heard it. And when I got in the house and looked up, the top began to just peel off there. She began to cry, and I told her not to cry. If it wasn't our time, we wouldn't go. And it wasn't our time. I didn't feel like it. I wasn't scared.
Why weren't you scared?
Because I knew good and well that there's a higher power, and our days is numbered, and we got but one time to die, and when that time comes, we go in regardless of where we are and what we're doing.
Well, what happened that night, though, sir? Where'd you stay?
I come in, and wife take me around the shoulders, and our daughter come in while the top was falling off and parked her car there and come in the house crying. I said, y'all hush crying, please. I says, we've not got but one time to go, and I don't feel like this is the time that we're going. And we were safe. The Lord spared our lives. It wasn't our time to die.
Even as the tornado struck, many dropped to their knees to pray. One was Mrs. Garfield Wood.
I went to a neighbor's house, and I just sat on my knees and prayed.
Where were you when it struck?
I was in the home of Miss Myra Meadows.
Was she injured?
Oh, no.
Well, tell me what happened at that moment.
At this home, the carport sat on her daughter, Mrs. W.T. Avery's new car, and trees sat all around. But I did not hear any of them.
You didn't hear any?
No, ma'am. I was on my knees praying.
Do you felt your prayers were answered?
I feel that my prayers were answered.
In all, 4 died in Brent on Sunday night. The storm's 5th victim was claimed later. O.J. James knew her.
Yes. By the way, she lived, that little house right yonder, you see yonder? She lived in that little house right there. And she died, died yesterday, just got word. That was the 5th person that I know of was killed.
The numbness of Sunday night in the dark, surrounded by fallen buildings, homes, and trees, gave way to stunned disbelief on Monday morning. The light of day, the only light except car headlights, flashlights, and lanterns since the tornado hit, showed the absolute devastation. The physical town of Brent was no more. Already on Monday morning, emergency work was underway. The National Guard was there. The state troopers were on duty to help local police. Power and telephone crews rolled in. The Red Cross was on hand, and the Salvation Army had been there since 12:30 Monday morning. For the residents of Brent, life had to go on. Your house may be gone, but there was work to be done. And Thomas Elam was among those who had to do the best he could.
We've been bathing out of the ditch. We have a ditch down here, fish pond. We bathe out of it at night. And hell, been until yesterday. We got water yesterday. We bathed 3 nights out of the ditch and cooked in the yard. And then we're eating with a knife in the garden now.
For Joe Patridge, Monday morning brought stark realization of business life. He didn't have to worry about a gasoline shortage. His service station was unable to serve its customers.
Friday at in at 12:30, I poured this concrete on this island right here.
And how much was the total project? How much did it cost you?
Oh, approximately $10,000.
And now that you've lost it, what are you going to do now?
Build it back. Build it back. We're back in business. You can see the canopy. It looks bad, but we're going to build it back. We can't. That's all we can do. We got to go back.
What's your biggest loss here?
This pump island. That's where my money was. That's where I just spent $10,000.
So can you find a loan for that, or are you going to have to use your own money, or what?
Well, the SBA, they've got this 5% loan, but I don't know where I'll go that route or not. Might go to the bank. Probably won't get the 5% money, but I can pull a few strings. I don't know yet what. It's a lot of red tape for this SBA stuff. I don't know. But we're going to build back.
How long do you think it'll take you before you're back at full strength?
Oh, 30 days.
That quickly.
We're probably guess now. Our customers begin to come back. They didn't know we were here yesterday, but it's picking up. And I think 30 days, if I get a contractor back and we're building, we won't have the canopy back in 30 days, but we'll be back.
The source of comfort and food for many in Brent on Monday was the Salvation Army. It was set up in Brent to administer aid and comfort a scant 6 hours after the storm struck. Major James Pappas is the Salvation Army spokesman.
Mr. Pappas, how long has the Salvation Army been here in Brent? Just a little bit after midnight, Monday morning, actually it was. It was about 4 or 5 hours of the tornado.
In that time, how many people have come by your setup here? How many people have you helped?
We have been so busy, we really haven't been able to count statistics, and we've just been constantly trying to help the people without Well, we just simply didn't have the time to count. We are in the process of trying to put some of these things together now. We wanted to meet the needs of the people first, and then we work with the statistics as go along.
In this damaged area here in Brent, what does the number one need seem to be? Is it housing, clothing, medical services, what?
Well, in the beginning, of course, the main thing was food. All of the electricity was off, all the gas was off. A lot of the people didn't have the clothing. The houses have been pretty well tore up. And I would say also a little bit of counseling to boot.
How long can you stay? That's the big question now. Will you stay till it's all over here?
We're here until we feel that the need has been met. I believe the OEP is going to be here until Saturday. We are winding it down somewhat now. There's not been as many calls. We think that most of our requests came last week, shortly after all of the damage, when we set up our clothing room and distribution for food out at the elementary school.
Governor Wallace visited Brent, pledged the state's efforts in helping, and promised to prod the federal government into quick response. It came almost immediately. Brent was declared a disaster area, and the Office of Emergency Preparedness moved in. Ernie Ford is the federal man in charge in Brent and Centerville.
To help this disaster victims sign up for the assistance that's available to them through the various federal agencies. This office is operated by the OEP, Office of Emergency Preparedness.
How many people on your staff working with you?
There's approximately 15 to 16 people on the staff on a day-to-day basis.
And since Sunday, May 27th, when the tornado struck, how many people have you handled casework?
375 to 400 in this area, for the Centerville-Brent area only.
Perhaps the most telling story of the destruction in Brent comes from an insurance adjuster, Charles Poling of Virginia, who has seen a lot of what happens when nature strikes at what man has built.
This is one of the worst storms I've seen, and I've been on a number of storms during the last 25 years.
What storms have you seen in the past?
Well, I've been in Portland, Oregon on typhoon, hurricanes in Miami, the disaster in Gulfport, Camille, number of hurricanes in Florida, tornadoes in St. Louis in the area, and you were lucky that you weren't followed by hail, because hail usually follows tornado.
Do you think it's something short of miraculous that more lives weren't lost?
This is absolutely miraculous, because I've seen a lot less damage and a lot greater loss of life than you've had here.
What's going to happen with these people filing their claims, sir? What's going to happen at this point? Are they going to get an opportunity to get all their claims filed?
Yes, they're going to get all their claims filed, and we're settling them as fast as we can. Their problem is going to be finding contractors who will be able to rebuild quickly, because there's a scarcity.
Brent is in the middle of what is called the Bible Belt. And while sophisticated city dwellers might sometimes smile at that term, it was the Bible and the church the people turned to for comfort and consolation.
God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early.
With the sky for a ceiling and a view of destruction for a wall, church services were held at Brent Baptist Church last
The Lord
Sunday.
of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge.
The Reverend David McGowan is the new pastor of the Brent Baptist Church, and he held his first full service in the hall of what had been the pride of Brent, a 66-year-old church with a new sanctuary just 6 years old. It was a visiting minister who was holding services in the church a week before when the tornado struck, and it was this sanctuary where one man lost his life and many others were injured. After a week of hard work, cleaning up the debris from the storm, the people gathered again in the church, and when they lifted their eyes to God, there was no roof to block their view.
O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the world thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power force displayed.
And even as the church services were going on, another emergency broke out. Just 2 blocks away from the church, a fire broke out in the attic of a home that had already been damaged by the tornado. Volunteer firemen rushed to the house, and what available fire hoses could be found were turned on to bring the blaze under control. But it was too late with too little. The house was gutted, and what few possessions were left from the storm were almost totally destroyed. In the midst of all the suffering the town had already endured, there was still time for concern over loss from a fire. Aid from the fire was given, and the church services continued uninterrupted.
I believe that God is bringing forth a new and whole era in Brent Baptist Church. I believe that He, by pulling each and all of us together under His grace, has greater and better things than we've ever thought of before. A whole new event in our life. But I think most of all, God is taking this opportunity to show us the degree of faith and trust we have in Him. Now, I don't know why the tornado or whatever it might have been that come sailing through did what it did. But I do know something. I know and I have seen the work of a mighty and wonderful God protecting all of you. It's been the word that has been shared with me. Pastor, I just don't understand how we escaped with a small amount of injuries as we've had. And all I can say is because of the love of God.
So, with its faith steadfast, the town of Brent must now rebuild. And business is where the rebuilding is critical. Businesses provide jobs, and for the people to rebuild, they must have work. The Olin Belcher Lumber Company provides employment for a lot of people in Brent. It was heavily damaged by the tornado, with some of the buildings in the complex requiring extensive work before they can be used again. Equally important, a power unit necessary for the mill to operate was destroyed. But Belcher Lumber is helping, keeping as many of its workers on the job, drawing their salaries as possible. Unemployment insurance helps, but it is not a substitute for a regular income. Olin Belcher says his company is already rebuilding and intends to be a part of a new Brent.
Mr. Belcher, it looks like you've suffered some pretty extensive damage here. What got hit the hardest?
We sure have. It was our power plant because we make all our own power to pull every department we have here.
All right, is the power plant the number one area that hurts you the most?
Yes.
How much revenue lost in a day does this mean?
Well, we gross about $10,000 to $12,000 a day here, which about $3,000 is paid out for labor.
All right, now, other than at the yard here, you told me, I believe, you lost some timberland. How many acres?
We lost, you might say, 100 acres of timber, but it isn't a complete loss. We'll salvage the trees at a discount. They won't bring as much money, of course. Some of it will be left in the wood broken and so forth.
As Belcher Lumber rebuilds, the Bank of Brent looks to the future of the town it serves. Bank President Ed Patridge has some ideas about the rebuilding of Brent and is already making the bank's resources available.
The bank apparently was about the only building that was still standing. Financial information-wise, we haven't had any requests for loans so far. We've had a few government agencies, HUD, SBA, OEP, and one or two other offices to set up over in Somerville. But as far as information for loans here so far, we haven't received any.
Do you think a lot of people will get loans from the federal government? Will you help them with this kind of advice?
Through last Friday, I believe it was, out of the Tuscaloosa office, they had received something like 292 applications through the office up there from the Greensboro and the Brent areas. Yes, ma'am. I think we'll have quite a bit. And the First National Bank of Montgomery they have offered us all of their assistance. So they've had 4 men here with us practically all the time that we were here. So they're going to help us out all they can.
What about people that are now without jobs?
Well, Olin Belcher Lumber Company says that no one in his plant will miss a payday. ND Cash Company, they were out of commission approximately 4 days. They resumed operations yesterday. So outside of the merchants and possibly a few more areas, I don't think there'll be too many people out of jobs. But now, as far as the merchants, there will be quite a few out of jobs. In the drugstore and possibly one or two other businesses around. But with the bank and everything else, we're okay. What I would really like to see, I'd like to see something like a mall open up. Cost-wise, I think it'd be a lot easier, a lot cheaper for everyone to be under one roof. It'd be rather than have individual buildings. There, two people could they could share the same wall, so to speak. And frankly, I think it would be a lot easier, a lot cheaper, and a lot more convenient-wise. By the way, we'd have one town under one roof, so to speak. I think this would be the thing to do.
Think it's possible?
Yes, I think so. It's I don't say anything within the next 2 or 3 months, but I think so that once we settle down and decide exactly what we do want, I think it's possible with the assistance of these various government agents and also of our correspondent banks, the Exchange Security Bank in Birmingham, and of course the First National Bank down in Montgomery.
Much of the leadership for rebuilding must, of course, come from the government of the town of Brent. Mayor Melford Worrell, obviously distraught over what has happened to his town, agrees the future holds promise.
Didn't realize the full impact of this thing until, well, we still realize as we go along trying to clean our city, we still realize a tremendous thing that has happened to us.
Let me ask you a question that's a little personal. How old are you?
I'm 68-year-old.
A person that's 68, does he feel like there's no use starting over? Does he feel a sense of despair?
Oh no. We just beginning. We just beginning to start. No, there's no quitting place in life. We don't find that there's any quitting place in life. I can't see. We left here for a purpose. We aspired for a purpose. We put in this position for a purpose. And certainly, we look into the future. I'm planning as though I was a kid. That for my city and for my church and for the whole community.
You say that it was for a purpose. What was that purpose?
Well, the Lord knows what that purpose was. We don't know. We don't question Him. We don't question God and His actions. We just accept. We just accept it and then live by faith.
The same kind of spirit of rebuilding also infects the residents of Brent. One, Onro Edom, has lived in the town all of his life. He's 74. And he says he's going to rebuild on a hill at the back of his lot so he can look out over his community.
We're going to build this whole town back up. We're not going to quit. Ain't going to give up.
How do you feel after all this? It's been
I feel like I've been blessed. I really feel like I've been blessed in a way.
Tell me about that.
Wake me up and make me see things that I've never seen before. And I don't know if it's going to be a blessing to me. I've lost plenty, but I'm not worried. I'm not going to put no gray hair in my head.
What do you see that you didn't see before?
Oh, well, I see how folks ought to respect each other and love each other and live right, or more so than ever did before. You know, I wasn't raised up to, I don't know, people just done most any kind of way, but I think we ought to be different to what we have been. I think it'll help us to see it, too. See the light. I guess that's about it. But just like I say, we're not giving up. Tell you the truth, we're going to be like the boy was going across the battlefield where they'd been fighting. He saw two Germans in there, him and his buddy, and the other one of them said, let's drop what these things that explodes?
Grenade?
Let's drop a grenade in there and kill them both. And the other one said, no, let's wake them up and have a good fight. And so that's the way I feel. I feel like we're ready to have a good fight and build back. Just like that boy was doing.
Mr. Elam's son, Thomas, lost a lot in the tornado, but he's looking ahead even now.
Mr. Elam, what happened to your cattle?
We had to sell them. Had 55 head, and we had to sell them. All the fences are down. We didn't have time to repair the fence.
And none of them got killed?
No, ma'am. Not any. No injuries to the cattle that we know of.
What are you going to do now? Are you going to stay in Brent? Are you going to rebuild?
Yes, ma'am. We're going to stay in Brent. We don't know about the rebuilding. We're going to stay in Brent.
What have you learned from the insurance adjusters at this point?
Not much. We've had 3 different ones, and We don't know anything more than we did last week, same time last week. Now,
What have they been telling you?
well, they'll tell you today there'll be another adjuster tomorrow. That's all we know.
Well, are you pressuring them to get more information?
No, not too much. I thought they'd work it out and would come on, and so I don't know. I'm not in that big a hurry. I don't want to make a adjustment too fast, because every day I can find something else wrong with my house now. The floors is all settling and everything, and so I don't want to be in too big a hurry, but I'd love to know a little bit about what's going on.
Can you function? Your house looks pretty well demolished.
Well, it is pretty well marked. We are living there. We stay 5 of us stays that night.
There is no way to put a monetary value on life and on its possessions. To Carter Thompson, life itself is precious, and a little happiness in life from music is his contribution.
Tell me, how old are you, Mr. Thompson?
I'll be 74 the 19th of next month.
And how long have you been playing your harmonica?
Off and on since a child.
And how long have you lived here in Brent?
13 years.
What happened to your harmonica when the tornado came through here?
They got wet and they just played out on me some way.
Did you find all of them after the storm?
I haven't found all of them yet.
Did you find most of them, though?
Yeah. These are the only 2 that wasn't anything wrong with. They don't sound as like I'd like them to, but I'm not grumbling.
Well, you got your harmonicas and you got some other things left, and you're sitting here in the main street of the town you've lived in for most of your life. How does that make you feel?
I feel thankful. Thankful.
Why do you feel thankful? Why?
Well, for all the good things that ever happened to me, and the good Lord that stands by me and guides me, it lets me know when I do wrong.
And life goes on in Brent, Alabama. This is Wendell Harris. Thank you and good night for WAPI News.